Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's BraveCat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. This one's coming out a little bit late here, but I'll try to make that up. So, I created this kind of short-term roadmap for the website itself. So right now I'm currently mostly working on the rest of the Catastrophist papers, as well as trying to create some sort of pole shift star map navigation tool, where hopefully you'll be able to pretty much tilt the Earth itself any which way you want, and then be able to create functional navigational charts from depending on whatever tilt is chosen. And I could try to make, some presets for the most prominent theories. So we could do like a Ben Davidson pole shift chart. We could do one based off of some of the ECDO theories, like from Craig Stone, Ethical Skeptic. Something that's fully customizable and usable. That's probably the most ambitious project currently. And then some sort of upgraded earthquake reporting, so something that is just a little bit more robust than what I have now. And there's a few things already planned for that map, like being able to track fires, droughts, hurricanes and whatnot, as well as fires. And that'll probably end up having to go on a separate map, just because, we don't want things too junked up. And speaking of fires though, that is one of the things I'll try to cover here today. So we've had some good news in general with some of these fires. Looks like this one's totally out. But right after this whole area got contained up in Nebraska, there's another fire that just broke out just northeast of it. So that one's another 37,000 acres. Pretty wild how that is going. But let's just get right into the rest of it here. So, in terms of space weather, things have again been pretty quiet, and the only thing really on the radar is going to be the minor coronal hole stream. And I think the aurora forecast down here actually does show that. So right now things are really calm for the most part. But then once it kind of blooms out again, I think this going into tomorrow seems to be when they're expecting that coronal hole stream. But even with that, alright, so this right here is like pretty much normal nominal conditions. And then just with a simple coronal hole stream, and it's not even that big of a coronal hole either. Nope, can't look there. If we go in here, right, we have that southern facing region and the small one up here. So even this amount of aurora activity is kind of crazy to have, just from probably the most minor thing that could possibly happen. And the auroras could be more exasperated than usual. So again, that's just like one of those details happening that's like, hey, pay attention, right? So anyways, looking at the far side regions here, we just have a small potential region, which if it weren't for the fact that you can actually kind of see some potential bright active regions back there, I would say there's probably not any sunspots left. But it looks like there could actually be another active region ready to face us right around the corner. So we can't see it on here yet, but we can see everything that is here. And most of it looks relatively stable, even though we have quite a few different sunspot groups. But the one down here, now this one looks ready to go. It's got some complexity to it, and I think it already flared just a few days ago, but back when it was over on the other side. So we could definitely have some potential for various eruptions happening, especially again, really emphasizing this as we go into early April. That is when really anything could happen, let's just say, pretty much. So I think that pretty much covers it up there. I'm going to really quickly check on the earthquakes here. And looking at everything throughout the week, I took off the Canada feed. Let me just show you what that looks like with the 30 days instead of 7. Yeah, so when we look at this mess here, the only thing that really bogs everything down is this one stack up by Alaska. So it's doing some sort of refresh. And once it goes back, and this is the last 30 days because it's the Canada feed, but there is a towering stack of tremors that have gone in this region. So if we just zoom in all the way here, so we have this, and this is technically up in Canada, but there is a USGS reported swarm going on in basically the same region. Let me just get that up really quick. So when we remove the Canada feed, there's still, quite a lot going on up here. And this is basically the very top of the entire subduction zone that goes down here. And, along with all the stuff we've been seeing, which, given how this plate has been acting for the last year, I think it's I guess one of my theories is this, huge breakage that has the potential for happening here. The thing that, people have been worried about and stuff. I think it's taking so long, and it's going to be a slower process because of how many different release points there is. So basically, with combination of a lot of the factors going on in this region, not just geologically, but also when it comes to potential man-made things. So for example, we have this 4 down here, which struck closer to LA. And I mean, it seems like a long time coming for this, even just any sort of significant release to happen over there. But so I looked it up, and this whole region, so hold on, let me just put that in again. So when it comes to all the different factors that come into play here, it was already in there. So it's right down by this huge kind of ancient lava bed kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't even really say ancient, because I think actually a lot of the different volcanic beds and different buttes over here, they're actually not that old. Like hundreds to maybe thousands years old in most of these cases. And they're not super active, but again, these are areas where seismic energy can definitely release. But then in the same area, we also have tons of other stuff going on here. So we have a lot of power generation. There's even a few major kind of transformers just down here. So there's a whole capacitor sort of station for power. So there's a lot of different factors to why, earthquakes would be more likely to strike locations like this. So let's see, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so the reason why we see so many tremors and so much kind of spread out activity, and that is kind of a good thing actually. It does release the potential for bigger events, especially when we take a look at the tremor map here. So when we see a lot of slow slip tremor events on here, based on the kind of activity we see going on the rest of the Pacific, then we can kind of gauge where things are at. So if there's a lot of stuff going on the other side of the Pacific, which is kind of the case. I mean, there was a 7.5, a 6 up here in Japan, and just all these other areas filling in. So it does make sense to see a lot of pressure being put off in these areas and potential movement in the plate itself. So the thing is, if we see a lot of this activity just completely drop off or start to kind of swarm with larger magnitudes, then that's kind of when you got to be on watch for something to happen over here. At least kind of to how I understand it. It's another thing I'm trying to understand better. Like we have all these fours clustered over here. We've got everything going on up here. And so this is kind of that middle point between these regions. And, you know, really kind of dictates what's going to happen over here. So anyways, though. So taking a look at the Italy quake map here. Nothing significant. Nothing even over a 3. And I looked at the chart again. There's been nothing over magnitude 3 in the last 24 hours since I made my last update. And yet they've just kind of upgraded the chart here for 78 instead of 75. So they added 3, which makes me think the previous 4s that happened and greater in the last several days, they just kind of magically added that on there for whatever reason. I don't know, whatever. It's just kind of my little cat and mouse game, I suppose. Looking at that chart and seeing it change in unexpected ways, like almost every single day. It just does something weird. So, anyways, I actually haven't even looked at this list yet. Wow. So, okay. It's not that long of a list, but every single one of these volcanoes has a volcanic ash advisory for it. So even up here in Kamchatka, I think it's been a few days since this has done anything, but we have another 33,000 foot high blast, which I think pretty much anything over 30,000 is, you know, kind of significant. And most of these are much lower than that. But again, all of them have some sort of ash advisory going on here. And most of them have the blasts listed. So seems like the volcanic activity might be on the rise here, especially with all the deep earthquakes we've had. Like especially in the regions that actually have volcanoes. But anyways, I should really wrap this up. So what we have for the end of this here is really just shouting out like Ethical Skeptic and Craigstone and really all these people that are in this kind of research field, especially over here on X. But most of these people have their own websites as well, and I would definitely check out Ethical Skeptic. He has a really nice website, a lot of different papers and content that he's published here, and he also has this book that's coming out pretty soon. But anyways, I think that'll pretty much about do it for today's video. So, and then kind of over here on the website, I have so far even a ton of links to go through. So, you know, it kind of starts with a lot of the different other dashboards and scientific things you can go to. But then we got Prepper's Resource Corner with all of the usual links, as well as Ben's survival course, the basic and the advanced. And down here we have a lot of the different researchers here. So, and disaster related things. So we have Geoscore and a couple of other suspicious observers links, as well as Ethical Skeptic, Craig Stone, David Sunfellow, Junho, and Zacharias. And these 4 have their own websites as well. Again, with so many good things on there. And, you know, with some of the other kind of roadmap things, especially that I have going on, you know, I'm trying to make this website something that has things that aren't necessarily elsewhere. And really, again, it's more of kind of a repository with having some different tools for looking at these things and other stuff. So, you know, I'm trying to add everything that I can to really, I guess, kind of, you know, warrant its existence, really, you know, try to make it something useful. But anyways, that'll do it for today's update. So I hope you all enjoyed, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more, and share this video if you dare. So I'll catch you all in the next.